think a child should have a well-rounded life. Gymnastics is just one of those activities they should be doing. If a coach or an organization is pressuring parents to put them in an unsafe mental and emotional situation for that child, then we just think that's a toxic mixture for children. And we've thought that since 1991 when we started our organization. I was your typical athlete, wasn't very flexible, but I knew some guys that were gymnasts in football, and I'm a very competitive guy. And we would have competitions, doing handstand contests, monkey bars, things like that in off season. And I always admired their upper body strength, their flexibility, and I couldn't touch my toes to save my life. This sport's the only sport that fundamentally teaches rotation and translation in all three axes. So I recognized pretty early, and this is way back in the 70s, that gymnastics was probably the best developmental sport you could put a kid in. From the time your child's born, they're starting to move, and of course, every time they do move and discover something about their hand, their foot, their eyes, the world around them, they're connecting neurological pathways, and it helps them develop their mental acumen too. And so when I have kids, I want to put them in gymnastics, and so that's kind of the start of the story. So coming out of UTA, I had 2 offers from Texas Instruments. I did that for about 6 years. One day I looked up though, and it wasn't very fast, and I looked around the table at a meeting, and I was to the point where I felt like I was teaching and I wasn't learning. And I said, well, I'm only 6 years into my career, and now I'm the teacher, not the student. And it just all of a sudden hit me that day, I need to move on. The primary thing that I learned at Texas Instruments was very specific control of a process. I like to tell people, in a way, it's our job to help manufacture gymnasts. I have never been more challenged in my life than I am doing gymnastics with little kids, because every single kid has their own DNA, so we can plan, but we have no idea what's going to come out the other end. And so the next place I went to work was a place called Convex Supercomputer Corporation. I did that for about 3 or 4 years, and the thing that I learned when I was at Convex on their manufacturing floor was more of a management style that I really enjoyed, where the manufacturing floor and the operator on the floor had the authority to shut down the entire floor at any time. And I also learned at Convex an interviewing style that I thought was extremely good, and it was a round table interview with a black ball approach. So literally, and a guy working, warehouse receiving could interview me as a computer science guy, and if I'm a jerk and I treated that guy like a jerk, he had the right to say, look, we're not going to hire this guy because he doesn't fit in the team. And I really liked that style. Those are the backgrounds that I used to fundamentally run ASI.
I think gymnastics is good regardless of what activity the child decides to do. It gives them advantages athletically, obviously, whether they decide to play sports in high school.
Gymnastics is just very well-rounded. You work on strength, flexibility, coordination.
And with a strong base of that kind of sets you up for success in any other thing you want to do in life. So when it comes to baseball, soccer, volleyball, anything that you want to play, it all starts with balance and coordination, and that's a good place to start.
But it also teaches things like respect, which is valuable when they get into the workplace. It teaches things like patience. It teaches things like perseverance when they encounter a difficult skill and have to keep working through it and working through it. It teaches the value of going back to the basics sometimes.
But it gives you the physical ability and the self-awareness and the comfort and the confidence to be able to take the knowledge you've made physically into another sport. The chance to be independent at such a young age just instills a lot of confidence. It's really cool. I love it. It's awesome.
We have a philosophy of safety, fun, and skill acquisition. We want the child to have as much fun as possible while we're simultaneously teaching them as much as possible. So if you take a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, then we're kind of letting them explore, and either doing gross motor skill things. You transition up more into the upper levels. Fun might be more of a internal competitive drive. So I think as a child develops, the definition of fun goes through a spectrum change. You want to push right up against that threshold of fun and challenge an athlete at all times without going over the line of fun. You also want to do everything you can within reason to ensure safety. Injuries do occur in sports. It's a given. You want to look at every injury if possible, and that's what we do at ASI. We look at every injury and we determine, is that something that we can make some kind of a facility improvement, equipment improvement, a coaching improvement, such that we can minimize the risk of injury without substantially, minimizing fun and quality.
Safety is the number one thing, no doubt. Safety first, fun second, for sure.
We always come from a side of safety. So usually if you tell the parent, I'm doing this for your child's safety, they'll understand it.
If I'm working with a child, then I have a responsibility to protect that child against any kind of abuse. Emotional abuse, physical abuse. So that physical abuse could be come from the parent, or it could come from a coach. You can have grooming practices where you have a coach or an adult befriending someone, which could lead to predatory type practices, which includes sexual molestation. We take that into account when we're hiring. We want a person who we think will fit in. If there's any kind of tendencies that we find objectionable, those are rooted out. So we require every single staff person to get a USAG safety certification from the time we open. Now, we've since stopped doing that because we developed our own safety certification programs that are much stricter than the USAG standard. So anything that could produce an incident, we look at, and we look at ways to avoid abuse.
So we don't put any coaches in a position that they don't feel comfortable with. We always make sure that the coaches feel comfortable out here, because that's how we get the best product on the floor. Also, when it comes to legal things, we go through a lot of no-zone training. So if we're spotting something along the waistline to get the arm all the way across, anything like that, we make sure that the coaches are well aware of the situations they could possibly be put in.
We engineer our facilities such that our restroom vestibules are open. Our kiosks all face towards the doors. We have staff working the lobbies. So we try to ensure that the kids can get from the automobile all the way into the facility while they're being supervised. We've never allowed, what we call homeschooling of children. That's a standard practice in our industry. We limit the number of workouts that kids can have, sort of like a pitch count in baseball, if you will, for little leagues. It's a holistic approach to child safety.
From a legal standpoint, addressing safety on the front end is critical, because especially in an industry where accidents can happen, you want folks that believe in the importance of safety from a standpoint of preventing accidents, and then what to do and how to handle things when accidents do happen.
Once we're introduced to safety at ASI, safety is like the number one thing we think about all the time.
We have a very comprehensive system, and we call it the university. And it goes back to my belief system in always learn. And our university is constantly being updated. So we require our coaches to hold a ton of safety certifications, teaching certifications, where we teach what we call progressive gymnastics.
When we take on a new hire, sometimes it's a little overwhelming for them to know how much they have to do before they can just jump out on the floor. We start with a lot of online training.
It's got courses all the way from just how to be a basic employee to how to coach the lower level classes, the upper level classes, and how to be safe from every program that we offer.
We set up a lot of proper progressions. We make sure all the coaches are aware of those proper progressions. That way we're not skipping.
And if we have coaches that aren't following safe progressions, then we redirect them back to the university for further education. Coaches that are following safe progressions, we found, teach very safe gymnasts who don't get hurt.
They want to make sure you know how to spot, you know how to do class management, you know where your kids are at all times. That's basically how kids prevent from getting injuries, is the way we do it here.
We are very strict with our compliance and our enforcement here at ASI.
The thing is that ASI, in my experience, hires fantastic people at every level. I'm talking at the executive level down to, the part-time coaches. They vet these people, they understand their character and their makeup, and they're not going to hire anybody that has anything in their background that would suggest that that's a risk. But even if there's not just a bad vibe or bad feeling, they're not going to hire that person.
Every time there's an incident, the staff is required to fill out an incident form. It's filed electronically, and then there's a follow-up with the customer, and then it's in a database, and we determine what kind of improvements, if any, we need to make. Those are ranked as like low, medium, and high incidents.
Those instances can be kind of scary going and talking to parents about that, especially if you're a young coach, not really having that experience yet. But the more and more that we talk to our parents, the more confident as a coach we feel. And I think if an instance happened where we absolutely did have to communicate to the parent, it was a serious conversation, we would be a lot more equipped with handling it, seeing as though we've built that relationship already with the parent.
The truth of the matter is, it's actually a good member services practices because it requires us to follow up with the customer. Overwhelmingly, most of these incidents are, little Susie skinned her knee on the carpet and she had a boo-boo, and so we gave her a little ice pack. We just make a determination and go, okay, well, let's fill out an incident form. But we still look at that stuff. So if we can change a carpet or change a matting or add something in some place, or somebody tripped over an uneven surface, even on the floor, we try to look at that. The high concerns require a complete video review by the management staff at the particular gym. And they do their own review, and then they submit it to our safety team, and our safety team then does an independent review of that. We do a complete review of the video, so we have video surveillance of the entire facility. And if it's determined that the coaches or the staff were at fault, or we thought they could have done better, we can go as far as what we call yanking their safety certifications and making them go back through the university and recertifying themselves. At a minimum, we challenge this team to come up with ways to improve their own performance.
Being a coach here, we always want to make sure our coaches are learning more and more and more.
And you're always learning and growing. If you're in a job where you're not learning and growing, it kind of defeats the purpose. You lose the drive.
We use each other's notes and skills to help. If I see something across the gym, it's really easy for me to kind of comment or say, hey, let's try this, or hey, let's not do that. We have a really good open line of communication. Everyone trusts each other.
We are teaching you this one way, but if you see a way to make it better, everyone sees something different, and we sometimes just get used to it. So feel free to come forth and say it, and we got some really good ideas.
And often someone that's brand new has insights into things that you've been coaching for years that really change the way that you think about things.
We don't wait for the police or the lawyers or the legal system. We start an entire internal review process, and it's pretty strict. We have 48 hours for the gym management team to provide essentially a docket for us to review. Effectively, if you think about it, it would be anything that I would have to turn over to my attorney. So we work pretty closely with our legal counsel, it's external legal counsel, to make sure that we're providing any information to ourselves that I would provide to them in case of a claim.
Having a system in place ahead of time is very important, because you not only want to sort of get ahead of things and know how you want your folks to handle those situations and respond to them, but you want to make sure when you bring on an employee and train that employee and have them start to work for your company and be the boots on the ground, there's a unified effort that sort of reflects how the company thinks.
It's kind of cool, that I can sit there and go, okay, you had an incident, you got 48 hours to be your own investigative team, your own judge, your own jury. Then you have to turn all that over to our safety compliance officers, safety compliance team. We're going to review it, and we feel like we're our own harshest critics. And if we feel like there's anything that we need to do, we'll take action on it. And I'm not sure that kind of system exists at the highest level within, say, USAG. If it does, they've never shared it with me. It would be great if we could.
When and if accidents do happen, you want folks that think about what the proper thing to do is in terms of response, both immediate response, follow-up response, and that sort of thing.
I've never once been in the gym and seen someone cut themselves, hurt themselves, or fall and hit their head without everyone snapping into motion extremely quickly. It's fluid, and it's really impressive to see. Going back and watching it on video is incredible, because half the gym doesn't even know it happened because it was so quickly and easily taken care of.
ASI does an amazing job when it does come to safety. Like, as soon as a kid gets hurt, they are on top of it.
One of the worst accidents that I remember happened several years ago in our Arlington gym. They were climbing the rope, and as she got about halfway down, she let go and dropped off the rope. So when she dropped, she caught her leg on the edge and broke her leg. What we ended up doing was immediately changing our standards such that every rope in our gym had to be mounted at least 5 feet from the edge of a pit. We're pretty unique at ASI in that each gym is run independently, if you will. So we have a management group at each gym, and yet we have corporate oversight. So in cases like you're talking about, the injury occurred in our Arlington gym, the Arlington management was required to report that, and then we did a review of it, and then our facilities and our corporate team came in, and we basically underwrote all of the improvements. If it has the ASI brand on the door, there's a huge backing of safety and compliance and engineering that assures that if your child walks in the door at ASI, they're going to have the best safety we can possibly offer.
There is some extra peace of mind when you hand your kid over to a coach, a teacher, a mentor, a role model, whoever it is, that does prioritize the safety of the kids that they're coaching. As a parent of a young ball player and parent of a young performer who's in musical theater, what my wife and I would like to think we are doing is entrusting our kids to coaches, directors, role models that have the same priorities as we do.
We've actually had, over the years, allegations of molestation and abuse. We had a coach that started working for us. Well, there was basically a boyfriend and girlfriend, and they started bringing a boy to the gym with them, and we thought it was a relative. One day, the authorities come walking in and arrest this coach, the male coach, and they were pretty sure that he had been abusing the child in one of our back offices. And eventually, the guy was convicted. Yeah, the very next day, the marketing director and I went and just tore down all these offices. So our philosophy has always been to have, open offices. If there is an office, it has to exist. It has to have a window in it. All the doors have to have windows. And so those are things that we got even more vigilant about after that incident. So we had a sleepover one night, and everything was going fine, and then they had all the kids go to sleep. But there was one little girl that would not go to sleep and kept bugging one of our staff members. And eventually they sat down on the edge of the pit, and then she started jumping all over him, and he lifted her off. A few days later, or I guess sometime after that, we get approached by the authorities. They come in and say, here's what's going on. When he lifted her up, the claim was he touched her in the breast area. And I fired the guy. I said, well, you're not getting fired for what is alleged, but you are guilty of horseplay. So you violated the horseplay policy. So either way, you shouldn't have been playing around with this girl in the pit. The improvement we made there was everything from this point on will be on surveillance video.
Having security cameras in place like ASI does, I think has been tremendously beneficial.
I think the new security cameras that we got are super helpful because our coaches can always go back and review video and see what we can do better to help ensure safety on the floor.
With our cameras, you're able to see who goes in and out of the bathrooms, if kids go in and out of the doors. It gives you that sense of your child can't walk in here without being 100% protected.
Since we've installed CCTV in our gyms, and that was back in 2002 timeframe, every single allegation against a coach has been proven to be false by CCTV.
It's a benefit to everybody. It's a benefit to the gym in terms of not only seeing what happened, but hey, what can we do differently next time if this is, maybe there is some sort of risk that we hadn't anticipated, but now we see that it was kind of a risky situation. But it's also certainly a benefit to whoever it is, a parent, a child. If they believe something happened that they weren't really comfortable with, they could possibly next day see footage of what it was, and everybody's sort of on the same page and there's a complete picture.
So it is a really nice tool that we're able to have to protect us too and to protect our coaches. If there was an accusation to occur, we can show them, and we're happy to show them our footage to be able to say, I know this is what you heard, but this is actually what happened.
We've told our staff, look, the cameras are there to tell the truth. If you do anything to hurt a child, the truth will be known. Vice versa, if you're teaching good gymnastics to a child, the truth will be known. And so we get overwhelming support from our management team, all of our coaches, and it's been a godsend.
It's good because we have some accountability. It makes sure that your coaching is in a place where you feel good about it and you take pride in the way that you're coaching.
It's really helpful as a manager to get to look back at that footage and review to see if a coach is coaching everything correctly.
It's a lot better when we can see ourselves from a camera perspective, so we can see our body language, we can see how we look from a distance, so that way we can improve our quality even more on the floor and making sure that we are being safe coaches and the best coaches we can be.
One night in our Arlington gym, the police showed up, drugged one of the sweetest coaches I know, but he's a big man, drug him out behind the gym with our manager and was trying to convince him that he had choked a 3-year-old boy. Well, he had no recollection of doing anything like that. We pulled it up, and there was a 6-year-old boy and the 3-year-old. So the 3-year-old was playing a little game, and the 3-year-old was out of the game. So Josh, our coach, put his hand on his shoulder and escorted him off to the side of the floor. So what was actually just a gentle coach, a male coach, walking a little boy over and sitting down, turned into, when they got home, coach choked me. Without video, this would have turned into a major catastrophe. And then just recently we had what turned out to be an attorney completely convinced that someone had molested his little boy in the pit. But by the time we had worked with this dad, he became, instead of being hostile, became one of our biggest advocates. He goes, man, I cannot believe the level y'all go to for child safety.
ASI Gymnastics is very clear that if they are recording something, and they always are, and there's cameras all over their gyms, parents are free to take a look and encouraged to take a look. If they think that something has happened that they aren't comfortable with, those videos are there for the parents to view. There's areas in the bleachers where the parents are asked, hey, you want to hang around? Watch what we're doing. We want you to see what it is that your kid is participating in, how they're being coached, how we are handling this in a safe way.
Cameras and parents can see that you're teaching those safety methods, and that it's a really effective way to make sure to cover your back.
Parents will tell us they tried different gyms, they've tried this gym and that gym, but when they get on the floor with us, they see that their child feels completely comfortable, and the parent will see that in the stands.
As a lawyer, that certainly means that things that might have ended up on my desk never do.
And it is kind of sad that being a man working in this industry, there's an automatic presumption that you're a pedophile. And I've even heard that on the radio in Dallas. They're like, well, any man who would work in the child industry must be a pedophile. And that's not true. Absolutely not true.
The industry is just such that people sometimes make unfair assumptions that because it's a gymnastics business, this is something we need to be worried about. But I don't think that's the case for certainly every gymnastics business. There may be some that in the past have sort of created that perception that unfortunately, stains the whole industry.
Anybody who wants to work with kids should be encouraged to work with kids, but we also should be smart about it, and we should do the engineering, the education, and the enforcement. So there's a level of training that we insist on. And of course, the bedrock of that's all of the safety certifications. That's a given. But then you have to have all the teaching certifications too.
We even have skill sheets as we would use for the kids, but these for the coaches even. So as the coaches are mastering ways to coach, the skills, they get marked off. So we don't like to rush the training. We take our time and we use the sheet so that way if they're getting training by multiple coaches, we all know where that coach is at.
And management requires constant overview, constant communication with staff, constant coaching of staff to help them be successful in their job and to meet the standards.
Whenever they've certified in every single skill, they get time practicing, leading the class about 3 or 4 times before they're allowed to have classes of their own.
They have all these things, and they have videos, and they have hands-on trainings, and we have clinics. So we pretty much leave no room for an excuse for you not to be the best coach you can once you get out on that floor.
If I was a parent, I would just look for a place where my kid would get some positive activity and some fun physical activity, and then I would let them sample all kinds of different activities. If they're having more fun, take them back. If they're not having fun, don't take them back. Watch your kids. Watch and see if they're smiling on the floor, smiling during the activity. Watch the coach's eyes and your kid's eyes. If there's a bond and they're looking at each other and you see the kids smile when the coach is talking to them, that means that's probably a good relationship. Our coach has to establish communication with a child no matter what their level is. If they're a little baby, if they're an advanced upper level athlete, or if they're somewhere in between, if they have autism.
So I usually have 3 and 4-year-olds come on the floor with their mom at first. And then as the kid's getting used to me, I try to take their hand and talk to them at their level, get down next to them and smile at them a lot and just try to build that confidence. Everything they do is amazing. High fives and...
At that age, they progress really quickly. So, I mean, we go week to week, and in a month, I'm seeing confidence just kind of pop in. They're giving each other high fives, and they're helping each other out of the pit, and it's just really cool to see the growth.
You just kind of do that for a while, and then eventually the kids see that other kids are having fun and that it's okay to have fun, and they're learning.
I believe that USA Gymnastics has made huge progress over the last many years on addressing the issue of grooming. Because if you look at what went on at Penn State, I think USA Gymnastics got out in the lead and said, look, we've got to address grooming. So there are several, policies and several practices that I think at least they started, looking at, saying, look, we need to take a look at this. Then you have to start drilling down into, okay, how do you do oversight and enforcement for a governing body to come in and say, look, I'm going to come in and do an inspection on your facility, and if you don't meet certain standards, I'm going to yank your membership. Then that could become a little bureaucratic vis-a-vis the NCAA. Flipping it the other way, the USAG finds itself up against a rock and a hard place today because now they're being held responsible at the national level because they have these major lawsuits going on. Several of us have been pretty proactive when it comes to trampoline parks and lawsuits related to trampoline parks. So the underwriters of the insurance industry are threatening possibly to stop insuring facilities that have trampolines. Well, ASI has trampolines. We use them for instructional purposes. So we've had to do a lot of lobbying and a lot of education to distinguish the difference between trampolines used for financial purposes versus trampolines used for instructional purposes. And so we've had to help bridge that gap. And so what I would like to see is more governance from the business side of USAG, where child safety is actually, I don't want to say as important, because I think that's a disservice to children. It should be more important than Olympic success. And right now, Olympic success is by far more important than child safety.
The competitiveness that these kids are put through at younger ages than almost any other sport, and the hours that they're expected to put in. There are some in the industry, I think, that really push that Olympic dream, and that's really the goal and the priority.
You would take a 7-year-old kid and work them out 24 hours a week in the gym, and then eventually, by the time they're 9, 10, they could be working out 30 to 40 hours a week. It just doesn't make sense to me, having kids work out that many hours at that young of an age, given all the risks that I'm aware of that exist. I think if we really did it where it was in the best interest of the child and not in the best interest of me as the owner or me as the coach, I think we could go to the highest level that our sport really, thirsts to achieve.
Every kid deserves a shot to learn through gymnastics, to get better physically, to get better in terms of discipline and work ethic, having fun, doing things that they push themselves to get better, no matter what their level is. And it's not all about, let's find the Olympians in this group.
You have to have someone go to the Olympics, so somebody has to go, right? So eventually someone propagates to the top through that system. But it's a willful design system where you know about all of these other people and all these other kids that some of the gyms call them the throwaway group. So I just refuse to participate in that system.
Right in our mission statement, we talk about teaching kids at their own level. So they're not just getting lumped into a program where they're going to get lost in the cracks or passed up as other kids pass them by, but each kid is important, and their progress, their individual progress is important.
Winning's great, but it's really more about giving kids a chance to compete at their level and hopefully to raise that level through good coaching and mentoring.
That's what I would like to see, and it would be so awesome if we took the lead on this. It'd be so awesome if we stood up and said, no more of this, not in our sport, not in gymnastics. And we can do that, and we can do it and be financially successful, and we can do it and be successful from a competitive level. We have answers here. Like, we know how to do this, and we can do this the right way and have an attitude of protecting children. Governing bodies have a fiduciary duty and a responsibility to protect children, and it's not that hard to solve. You just got to step up to the plate and take responsibility for it. If you're not willing to do that, you need to get out. And honestly, I think it transcends the sport of gymnastics. I think this is about child safety across the board in all sports.
As a parent of a baseball player in a very competitive setting, we are fortunate that my son's coach is much more about development and learning to play the game the right way, teamwork, things like that. It's much more about those things than about any trophy.
We have a lot of coaches that are extremely passionate about kids, and I don't think it's something you can teach somebody.
You can be a great coach, but if you don't love kids, I can't teach you how to love kids, but I can totally teach you how to do gymnastics. So.
Some coaches come in with that love for kids, and you can mold them and you can train them what to teach. But then you have coaches that come in and you're like, okay, great, you have the technical side of it. You know how to do a handstand, but do you know how to communicate that to a kid to where they feel confident in what they're doing?
If you're a coach and you love kids, you understand I have to be there. That's 90% of the game. The technical stuff is easy after that.
You can have coaches come in with all the skills and technique in the world, but if they don't love their job, it's going to show on the floor. The parents will see it, the kids will feel it, so you have to have that passion.
It's just a joy for me to come to work every day and work with a bunch of people that there's no egos. It's just all about the kids, and there's no blame game. It's just, let's have fun, let's work hard, and that's why I'm so proud of the staff.
My favorite thing working here is getting that kid And working here long term, seeing those kids that you get in the 3 and 4 year old classes and watching them grow up, 7, 8 years old, getting these big skills.
Being there for 9 years, the coolest thing is just being able to see a kid that have started maybe in tiny tots and they start at a year, and now I see them and they're 7 years old.
I think the coaching environment here is why I love ASI so much. When I come in, it's like I'm walking into another family to greet me.
It's like humbling to be a servant for this company. It's like, I'm just here, another guy doing my job, working on behalf of the coaches. It's really all about the coaches who are working for the kids, and the rest of us are just supporting the coaches.
I think our coaches are phenomenal, and I think having a good atmosphere with positive vibes, it passes on to the kids. So if a kid had a bad day at school, you come here to ASI and you forget all about that.
I love it. We are a team. You can't come in here and think that it's just you and it's all about you. You pretty much got to put your ego down and humble yourself and put all the pride aside and realize that you're not just you working at this gym. It's a whole team of people that makes up that one gym, and the whole gym is counting on everyone, not just one person.
It's really special when you walk in and you have, 3, 4 kids just run up to you just for a high five, a hug, just to see you. Stuff like that makes me forget about everything outside.
They're always going to remember you as their coach. So we always want to make sure that we're leaving a good impression with them and knowing that we care about them.